Chapter 24 The Pain of Silence. The second night after Jarissa arrived, he woke in the middle of the night. Linsco woke up as well and followed. He was doing better, but was still feverish and unsteady. He took Esanhelossa with him, trying to be as quiet as he could and remember what Ferron had thought to him about disguising his soul. This was made somewhat difficult both by his lingering sickness and the piercing voice of Esanhelossa that filled his ears. She sighed. "Go back to sleep, boy." He shook his head. "Last time I woke up in the middle of the night like this, it was because of you," he thought. "My goodness, is it too much to ask for just one of you to have a little sense? Why are you following the Zarevno anyway?" she said. That was the masculine equivalent of a certain word she had called Ethicica the night she woke Linsco up. Linsco glared at her, again thinking of how Mirsha would wash her mouth out with soap if she had one. She paused, waiting for his answer. "Well?" she prompted. "Speak, boy!" Linsco shook his head. He could not speak. Even if he could, he needed to stay silent. Jarissa stopped outside of town. "I know you're there," he said without turning around. Linsco stopped as well, getting a more secure grip on his sword. "And I know you ain't the real Jarissa," he thought. "Use your own voice, spy." The impostor, whose identity I am sure everyone has figured out is Bibosinho, frowned, thoughtful, though still did not turn around. "I am curious, though. How'd you figure it out?" he asked, still speaking in Linsco's voice. Linsco rolled his eyes. "Well, you clearly didn't do no research. You didn't use no dialect, but still used his full name and didn't correct Jarissa," he thought. The last time something like that had happened was one of the darkest times in Linsco's life. Linsco and Thefia had been worried for his safety. Luckily, Zebocron had standards and relented, at least a little, when Thefia told him what was happening. Bibosinho finally turned around, smiling. "Sorry, I forgot you won't talk right now," he said. Linsco glared at him. His silence was not from a lack of trying. The real Linsco would understand that. "He is right. Why are you so angry?" said Esanhelossa. "So your hand was cut off. Other people have gone through the same thing and they still talk. Just ask that uncle of yours, or that mage's little apprentice." Linsco was not sure which was worse, her trivialization of his problem or the fact she had called Luzmo his uncle. "Now I'm sure you already know what I want," Bibosinho said. "You. So how about you make this easy on both of us and just come with me? I'd say to come quietly, but..." He laughed a little. "You don't have no choice, do you?" Linsco's face hardened and he raised his sword. Bibosinho laughed, as did Esanhelossa. "You still think you can win? Look at yourself, fighting with the wrong hand, still feverish from all that time you spent walking while that girl you love desperately tried to keep you alive, trying to do this in barely more than your brother's oversized nightclothes. Not to mention you're so small I could probably squash you under my boot." Fed up with the insults and the imitation of his friend's voice, and finally set off by the mention of his size, Linsco attacked Bibosinho. He knew this anger was Bibosinho's goal, and that it would further hurt his already weakened performance, but he did not care. Bibosinho did not even draw a weapon. He just smiled, dodging Linsco's attacks with seeming ease. Linsco knew Bibosinho was toying him, and he hated it. He knew he should expect this from an enemy, but it still grated on him. Linsco fought with a furious energy, though he knew this was a bad idea. It was like when he had broken that pot all those months ago. He knew it was a bad idea, yet he could not stop himself. His movements, usually sure and precise, were awkward and clumsy as he struggled against anger, illness, and using his bad hand. Finally, Bibosinho tired of his game. In a much quicker time than Linsco's pride liked, the boy had been disarmed, and Bibosinho had twisted his right arm behind his back and put his knife to Linsco's throat. Linsco thrashed, but he could not break Bibosinho's grip. "What is happening?" Thefia had appeared, followed by the twins. Bibosinho straightened, forcing Linsco up as well. His mind was racing, trying to figure out an explanation and remember how many of the Soledi's tricks Ferron had taught his children. Sister Ashadelia frowned. "You ain't who you say you are. You're a Soledo spy." Thefia's face hardened. What have you done with the real Linsco Jarissa? A smile spread across Bibolsinho's face. Wouldn't you like to know? He said, finally abandoning his fake accent to Linsco's relief. It was disconcerting, though, hearing a voice that was certainly not Lanxeuse coming from his face. Befia shrouded herself, Bibolsinho, and Linsco in shadow. Linsco struggled out of Bibolsinho's grip, then felt blindly for his sword, while Befia found Bibolsinho and managed to pin the spy to the ground and take his knife. She let the light back in. She was sitting on his back, trying to hold his wrists in one hand, while her knife hovered over his back in the other. Linsco, though unsteady, stood over them, ready with Esanhelossa. What have you done with the real Linsco Jarissa? Befia repeated. Bibolsinho smiled. I'm not the person to ask. If you ever want to see him again, godson and daughter of Ferron, you'll surrender to the true king. They gasped, and he laughed. Befia's face hardened, anger blazing within her. In her anger, she brought down the knife, burying it in Bibolsinho's back. Sister Ashadelia gasped. Father Jeanfin paled. Befia and Elinsco's expressions were grim. Bibolsinho laughed, though he was coughing as well. He managed to get up and stumble away. His illusion flickered, revealing white blonde hair as short as a tyrant's and wild green eyes. He made it out of the village and died in a forest nearby. A hunter found his body a couple weeks later and asked Father Jeanfin to give him a proper burial and funeral, which the priest agreed to. All right, Father Jeanfin said after a minute. Let's get back and talk about whatever just happened. Befia nodded. Let's go. She almost took Linsco's hand, but realized he was holding Esanhelossa, and they started walking back. Are you all right? She asked. He nodded. Bibolsinho had only hurt his pride. She sighed. Good. She thought of Bibolsinho. She had killed people before. Of course she had. She was a soldier. But this felt different. Then she had killed on a battlefield. Bibolsinho was killed in her anger. He was killed because she was angry about what he had done to her friends, rather than because they had the misfortune to end up on opposite sides of a battlefield. It felt like she was more responsible for his death than any of the others she had killed. It's hard to believe, Father Jeanfin said to his sister, her doing something like that. He had known her for her whole life. The thought of her killing someone like that felt very strange. He knew she was a soldier and part of her job involved killing people, but still, it felt strange. Sister Ashadelia nodded. I know. She frowned. Given the circumstances, it could be argued that her culpability is lessened, since in her anger she wouldn't be... She shook her head. Sorry, I shouldn't be defending that. He shook his head. You care about her. It's normal to want to defend her. I'll hear her confession as soon as she asks. If a few lies for her protection were enough for her to feel that she needed confession, he was sure she would go after killing someone. Once they got back, they all sat at the table. All right, I'm confused, said Father Jeanfin. What just happened? Elisijo's the one to ask. He woke first, Befia said. Linsco opened his mouth, trying to speak, but then closed it again and sat back, looking down. Sorry, Elisijo, Befia said, taking his hand. He shook his head. Sister Ashadelia frowned. You had your sword. Did you guess it weren't him? Linsco nodded sadly. He had not wanted to believe it. Befia sighed. He was acting a little out of character, not speaking even a little dialect, not correcting Linsco, using his full name. I noticed, but I didn't want to consider it. Linsco nodded in agreement. So when he woke up in the middle of the night, you thought he was up to something and followed him. Is that right? Sister Ashadelia asked. Linsco nodded. It was close enough. He tilted his head and pointed at them. Do you want to know why we were there? She asked. He nodded. Father and I woke up to Senora Henya. We noticed that you and whoever that was were missing and decided we should investigate. That made him smile a little. Of course it was when they were about to Senora Henya. Father Jeanfin was frowning. Who was that? I'd guess he was one of Ethicica's Soledo, Befia said. Sister Ashadelia frowned. Who? Befia blinked and looked up. Ethicica, a Soledo working with the Jarissa King. Awful woman. She paused. She killed Bobo. Sister Ashadelia blinked. Someone... Mia Sisha was right? Thefia nodded. She was. She glanced at Linsco, then back at the nun. I don't want to say nothing else about her with him here. Painful memories. For both of us, really, but especially him. Linsco was avoiding his siblings' gazes. I'm sorry, Linsco Sijo, said Sister Ashadelia. He sighed and sat back, still not meeting their eyes. Anyway, I think Linsco Sijo was actually captured, Thefia said, taking no joy in that statement. The Jarissa King, or maybe Ethicica, must have told that man to pretend to be Linsco Sijo so he could get close to Elisijo and capture him. Sister Ashadelia frowned. So he was supposed to capture Ushakiso, but he knew it weren't the real Linsco. She looked at Linsco. You were gonna confront him, but he must have known you knew. He was expecting it and led you into a trap. Father Jeanfin, Linsco, and Thefia exchanged glances. Makes sense, Father Jeanfin said. He looked at Linsco and Thefia. So what about what he said? They sighed. I don't know. We can't surrender, but I'd hate to leave him there. Who knows what she's doing to him? Thefia asked. So what? Are you gonna rescue him? Sister Ashadelia asked. I wanna. Both of us do, but I ain't sure we can. Elisijo's still a little sick, and we don't know nothing about what's happening, how heavily he's been guarded, or even where he is, Thefia said. I don't want to do nothing till Elisijo's better. After that, maybe we can try something. Linsco looked down. Sister Ashadelia nodded. Is there anyone else who might help him? Thefia frowned. I don't know. There's a Braden girl, Conzi, who might help him, if she's still alive and free. Or maybe Elisa Sevilla, or this other girl Conzi's friendly with, but again, they might have been killed or captured. He could escape. Thefia sighed. I hope so. Well, we can keep talking about this tomorrow. For now, Sister and I need to say Yorahenya, and Thefia? Father Jeanfin said. Thefia nodded. I'll go to confession. I'll hear it now if you want. Killing someone is serious. I do. All right. He turned to his sibling. I'd rather not have to open the church at this hour, so you two should go outside. And remember, if you hear anything, you're also bound by the seal. You'd better take it as seriously as I do. Hearing someone's confession just in the rectory was what he usually did when someone showed up in the middle of the night asking for it, which happened more than one would think. He kept an extra Albin stolen there in case of that happening, too. They nodded. They knew what that meant. He would not break the seal if someone put a crossbow to his head. They went outside until Father Jeanfin told them they could come back in. Linsco and Thefia went to bed, while the twins said Yorahenya and then went back to sleep. Ethicica was suspicious and sent a few of her Soledo to question Father Jeanfin. The twins acted worried for them until they were told that Linsco and Thefia were traitors, and then they acted disappointed in them. Thefia gave the lies she had used while traveling, with a few additions, that they were from a nameless village nearby. They were on pilgrimage by Soledo, and Linsco's hand was cut off when they fled. Linsco was born mute, and they had come to Father Jeanfin so he could help with Linsco's hand, and stayed there because their village was destroyed. Ethicica regretted not keeping track of which villages they had destroyed. Linsco showed great self-restraint, and the only reaction when they commented on his height was him narrowing his eyes, Thefia falling into her mothering tone to tell them it was rude to say that, and the twins pointing out that there could be more than one short man. Ethicica concluded that Bibolsinho had disappeared or died due to causes unrelated to his mission, or had found them somewhere else. Lord Gaguelosso wrote to Lady Inha. Lady Inha Farelia Songenda. It has come to our attention that your niece and heir, Lady Iveria Dieca Songenda of Old Sillery, daughter of Lady Lucermia Fiadelia Songenda, was left in Soledo as a spy. Of course, we cannot tolerate this treachery and have imprisoned her. In addition to being a spy, she has also admitted to the murder of my brother, Lord Faligno, the father of my heir, Lady Gugugaga of Rosary. We will release her if you swear loyalty to Garendo, the true king, in blood. Tell us anything you know about the whereabouts of Princess Silenda and Prince Gero, and pay my living brother, Lord Irio, and me the enclosed sum of money, each in compensation for the death of Lord Faligno. Until you agree to our terms, Lady Iveria will remain imprisoned but alive. If you attempt to free her, we will kill her. If she escapes and succeed, we will order her recapture and death. If she fails, she will be kept alive. If you continue your resistance, we will have no choice but to crush it. I do not believe it is necessary to remind you of what happened during the Great Jarissa War. Remember, there are some Soledo who are loyal to their king. Your hidden villages will not protect you this time. Signed, Lord Gaguelosso Gago, Lord Rosenna. P.S. One of my companions has attached something to this letter. I tried to convince her not to, but it did not work. Lady Inha had been worried this had happened. Viavarelia had told her on the day she was supposed to pass on everything Vericica had told her that the girl had never arrived at the meeting in the tavern. Lady Inha had asked her if she could try to figure out what had happened to Vericica, but she did not want to risk it, especially with Deoliro's death so recently. The letter only confirmed her worries. The blood-stained hair Ethicica sent outraged her. After Princess Silenda talked her out of running off to Soledo to break the girl out, an argument she almost lost after Lady Inha offered to rescue her parents as well, Lady Inha accepted their terms, reluctantly. She wrote back to Lord Gaguelosso. Lord Gaguelosso, I accept your terms and will begin traveling to Soledo at once. I only ask that you return her personal items as well, especially a purple scarf, and give her the attached note. The scarf was a gift and is one of her most prized possessions. Signed, Lady Inha Fagelia Soncheta, Lady Soledo. She sent this letter to Vericica. Dear Vericica, I'm coming for you. Stay safe. Love, Madia Inyasisha. When Vericica received the letter, she started to cry. Lady Inha met Garendo, Ethicica, and Lord Gaguelosso in the throne room. Lord Iriel was there as well, against his will, judging by his sour expression, standing next to his brother. Menyosinho was standing behind them, his gaze fixed on his boots. He did not want to look at Vericica. Garendo had been trying to get Lord Gaguelosso to treat him better, but had really only succeeded in forcing the Michka to be less obvious about it. Ethicica was standing with Vericica. They were about the same height, but Vericica looked much smaller, weighed down by chains and leaning on her heavily for support. To say she looked bad was such an understatement that it made Faralie is a good mother look like an adequate description, and Chivalrous is a good man seem only slightly understated. Vericica's scalp was a mess of blood, scabs, and a few patches of hair, and her right hand was bloody and mangled, twisted and mutilated. Her clothes were ragged, stained with dirt and blood, except her scarf, draped around her shoulders, which was the one clean thing about her. She had no shoes. She was shivering almost violently, in part because she had no cloak, and delirious from fever, staring ahead with glassy eyes and murmuring incoherently. Vericica's things were on the floor next to her. Garendo was barely keeping his anger from his face, though it showed when he periodically glanced over at Ethicica. Lady Inha glared at Ethicica. What did you do to her, Jarissa? She asked, her voice flinty. Menyosinho blinked in what was either confusion or surprise. Vericica looked up, a smile spreading across her face. Didn't dear Jarissa tell you? It's Ethicica now, Ethicica said. Jarissa is dead. Gesha, Vericica murmured. Ethicica kicked her. Lady Inha went rigid, barely keeping her anger contained. Garendo's jaw tightened, and it took every bit of his willpower not to snap at Ethicica. Lord Gaguelosso looked over at her. Your real name is Jarissa. Ethicica sighed. Can we do this later? I have known you for 10 years, and only now find out that your real name is something completely different from what I have been calling you, he said. Listen to the last, Lord Gaguelosso, Garendo said, managing to keep his face calm and his tone even, despite his anger with Ethicica. Do this later. They straightened, and he looked at Lady Inha. Good afternoon, Lady Inha. She smiled coldly. Good afternoon. Do you have the money? He asked. She nodded and held out a bag of coins. There was a pause. Then Lord Gaguelosso nudged Menyosinho, who practically jumped, then went to take the coins from her. Garento's face twitched in a way that might have been a wince. Good, Garento said. Now for the rest of our deal. He met her eyes. End your resistance. Swear your loyalty to me. Unseen anger boiled within Lady Inha. It was an infuriating demand for 2 reasons. First, she hated him. He nearly wiped out her people, tortured her niece, and stole from a girl who was like a daughter to her. Second, the Soledo had never taken an oath of loyalty to the monarch, only to the country. People were fallen and imperfect. People could be corrupted. Their country was solid, a rock they could stand on, and what was good for the country was not always best for the monarch. Most saw no difference, but some, such as King Roberto the Terrible, had noticed it and ordered this same thing. It had not worked, and the Soledo had headed the resistance against him. Its regime, however, was arguably worse, as well as unstable. It was then overthrown by another resistance that was more peaceful, but even less stable. By that point, the soldiers were getting tired of all the rapid government changes, and had stopped being paid, so they had a coup, which was finally overthrown by King Roberto's son, King Rogero the Better, whose reign was long, mostly peaceful, and mostly stable, which was somewhat impressive considering the government had changed hands 4 times in the past year. Despite her anger, Lady Inha bowed to him and took out her knife. She grimaced as she cut her hand. Vericica blinked, the fog of her mind clearing long enough to realize what was happening. She gasped and tried to run to her. No! No, don't! Ethicica, not expecting much resistance from a delirious girl, was not holding her very tightly, so she was able to get away. However, with her feet bound and her chain so heavy, she did not get very far before falling. Ethicica chuckled and dragged her to her feet, holding her tighter now. Vericica shook her head, murmuring in protest. Lady Inha swore allegiance to the man she hated. Vericica kept murmuring and shaking her head. She cried out a few more times, at which point Ethicica would kick her, which earned her a glare from Garendo, and the girl went back to murmuring. Lady Inha was having a hard time holding her anger in. Garendo thought she was dragging her promise out too long and wished she would just get on with it. He was also pretty sure that she was doing it intentionally, so he would stop listening as hard and she could hide some loophole in it. That did not matter as much to him as Vericica getting away from Ethicica, and Ethicica actually facing consequences for all her torture. Garendo smiled when she was finished. Good, Lady Inha. Finally, he thought. Now rise and tell me, where are the young Princess Silenda and Prince Gaguelosso? She rose and bandaged her hand, then met his eyes calmly. I don't know. Wherever they aren't with me. We were at war less than 2 weeks ago. Why would they come to me for refuge? It was technically the truth. She could assume Princess Silenda was in Old Sillery, but she did not know for sure and had come alone to Soledo, and so, therefore, she was not strictly with her. Prince Gaguelosso she had no idea about. For all he knew, he could be dead. If he was not, she guessed he was either hiding in Riska, Jarissa, or another Soledo town, possibly in disguise. Quite likely in disguise. Hopefully in disguise. Garendo frowned. Really? You are quite close. You are almost like a mother to the lass. Lady Inha inclined her head. Yes, but still, only a short time ago, we were enemies. Satisfied, he smiled. Thank you, Lady Inha. I trust that if you learn anything about their whereabouts, you'll tell me immediately. She nodded. Of course. I serve my king and country. Her king being King Ridero. Thank you, Lady Inha. He looked to Ethicica. Vericica was still murmuring in protest to an action that had already happened. Give the lass back to her, Ethicica, he said. He looked at Lady Inha. I deeply apologize for her state, and especially for her hair. Ethicica needs to learn how to treat our prisoners. There was an edge to his voice. Ethicica made a small motion that implied she was rolling her eyes. If you like, it could call the doctor to look at her. Lady Inha smiled tightly. No, thank you. I think you've done enough. That seemed to sadden him. She knew, rationally, that she should accept his help, but she was barely keeping her anger down, and the last thing she wanted was to accept help from the cause of her anger. No, he had not been the one to torture her niece, but it was his fault she had been captured, and Lady Inha did not believe his apologies and regret were sincere. If she ran into some Deolirans or similar orders on her way back to Old Sillery, she would try to get help from them, but she would not waste time looking for them. Ethicica nodded and half led, half dragged Vericica to her aunt, carrying her things as well. She unlocked the girl's chains and shoved her over, then put down Vericica's things. Lady Inha caught her, fuming. "What did you do to her?" she hissed. "We just had a little fun, milady. I didn't want her to get bored down there," Ethicica said innocently. Garendo's jaw tightened. Lady Inha glared at her. She chuckled and walked back. Vericica shook her head, not looking up. "No, you shouldn't have." "I couldn't leave you here, Vericica," Lady Inha said. Vericica's eyes had clouded. She just kept shaking her head, barely hearing her aunt's words. "I believe we are done here," Garendo said. "You may leave, and, again, I'm sorry about what happened to her." Lady Inha nodded and bowed to him. "Goodbye. Thank you for returning her." Despite her grateful words and, she hoped, tone, her thoughts were nothing but bitter. "You're welcome, Lady Inha. Goodbye." She found Vericica's cloak and gave it to her, seeing her shivering, then picked up her bag, turned, and half led, half carried the girl away. When they got outside, she just carried her, since she was not sure how good of an idea it was to try to put her shoes and socks back on. Once they reached Lady Inha's horse and cart, and Vericica was inside, the older woman examined her. "My goodness, what did she do to you?" Lady Inha said. Vericica shook her head, her eyes closed. Lady Inha decided she should not ask, at least, not now. She had brought a change of clothes for her, but did not think Vericica should change until she was cleaner. She instead just gave her a few blankets and helped her spread one out on the floor and cover herself with another. She used Vericica's scarf to bandage the girl's hand. Vericica tried to fight her at first, but eventually recovered enough of her clarity for long enough to let her do it. Lady Inha rode to Viafarelia's house. They arrived at night, not wanting to risk her safety by having someone see together. The young widow opened the door and gasped, "Milady! I want—" She paused and fidgeted with the cuff of her sleeve, then looked up. "What brings you here?" she asked. Cashel was peeking out from behind her skirts, holding on to them tightly. "I'm bringing Vericica back home," said Lady Inha. Viafarelia's eyes went wide. "Vericica? But—" She fidgeted and glanced at her son, then leaned in and lowered her voice. "Is she all right?" "No, but all I'll ask from you are a bath, food, and a bed for her," Lady Inha said. "I'm sorry about this, Viafarelia, but you're close. If it's too much, I can go to Garendo." "No, it's fine," said Viafarelia. She glanced at Cashel, still hiding behind her skirts. "You can take my bed if Quixote lets you." "He still sleeps with you?" Lady Inha asked. Viafarelia looked down. "I used to share with Quixote until he and Linsco died. Now, yes." She had wanted it too. The emptiness of her bed was almost too much to bear. She looked up. "If I don't want to move, she can take Quixote and Quixote's bed. Well, it ain't really no one's no more, but it used to be theirs. If he lets you, then you can take that bed." Lady Inha shook her head. "No, you and Cashel should take the bed." She sighed. "All right." She showed Lady Inha where to put her horse and cart. Once she put it there, she carried out Vericica, who was sleeping, wrapped in blankets. The sight of her sent Cashel fleeing from behind his mother's skirts and back inside. Viafarelia gasped. "What happened to her?" She glanced back to make sure Cashel made it back inside. Lady Inha sighed. "I do not know, but I have suspicions." Viafarelia reached out a hand towards the girl's head. "Arrah!" She looked up at Lady Inha, eyes wide. "Oh, do something like that!" "That just says Esanhelossa, for one." She gripped the sides of her wimple, trying to keep her mind in the present. Her breathing was starting to quicken. "Like I said, I have suspicions. Let's talk about it inside." Lady Inha looked up. "I'm sorry for making you see this. Should I go to Garendo?" Viafarelia shook her head. "It's fun." Her pallor said otherwise.
Varela Ezo Cara and Fieso would probably not have reacted very well to Vericica's state either. At least here there were fewer people who might go off to Casedo to murder Ethicica. I have a change of clothes for her in there. Could you get them? Lady Inha said. Via Farelia nodded and took them. They went back inside. A girl of about 8 was sitting by the fire, crocheting. She frowned when she saw them. You're Lady Inha, she said. Lady Inha nodded. I am. This is my daughter, Theas, Via Farelia said. Her eldest daughter, and now her eldest child as well. Theos glanced at Vericica. She tried to hide it, but it bothered her. What happened to him? Via Farelia stiffened, but Lady Inha stayed calm. What happened to her? She corrected evenly. This is my niece, Vericica, and I am not sure what happened to her. Theos frowned. A girl? But where's her hair? And a kerchief? And a dress? The blankets left Vericica's feet and a little of her pants visible. Via Farelia was breathing heavily. Theakisa, she managed to say. Don't say things like that. Her hair was cut off and her kerchief was taken at some point, Lady Inha said. I would put it back, but I'm worried it would hurt her. Theos's eyes went wide. Someone did that to her? Via Farelia fidgeted with the hem of her wimple. Lady Inha sighed and looked down at Vericica. Sadly, yes, but we shouldn't talk about this. Theakisa, get a bath ready for Vericica. I need to talk to Lady Inha, Via Farelia said quickly. And where's your brother? In the room with Moko, I think, the girl said. She did not look happy about not being able to hear the adults talk, but did as she was told. Lady Inha and Via Farelia sat. The former set Vericica down as well, resting her head on her lap. Her dress had gotten dirty from carrying the girl, but she did not care. She was more concerned by the heat she could feel radiating from her. So what happened to her? Via Farelia asked. Was she captured? Lady Inha nodded. I believe Kesha hurt her. Via Farelia frowned. Garicia's mad sister? She was right. Unfortunately, she said. I do not know exactly what happened, but that is what I can guess. Via Farelia looked at Vericica. How bad is she? Lady Inha sighed. I didn't get much of a chance to check her over, but from what I saw, her palms and feet were cut and her right hand broken, and there was a lot of blood on her pants and sleeves. I suspect her arms and legs were injured as well. The widow frowned and glanced at where Theos had gone, but did not say anything. Theos came back with an empty tub, as well as soap and a cloth and towel, and set them by the fire. Vericica woke and tried to sit up, but she could not push herself up with her palms cut and one hand broken. Her aunt helped her up. Glad you're awake, Vericica, she said. Vericica blinked and looked around. La Via? She asked, her words slurring. Lady Inha nodded. We're at Via Farelia's house. Via Farelia gave her daughter a stern look. Young lady, don't stare. Theos had been looking at Vericica. Theos frowned. Why aren't she wearing no dress? Vericica leaned into her aunt, and Via Farelia glared at Theos. Soldier, Vericica murmured. When she was a spy, she was disguised as a soldier. Lady soldiers usually wear pants in case they have to fight, said Lady Inha. Theos looked up. You can find a dress. Lady Inha nodded. Yes, as Ella has taught us. But you can't wear skirts under a soldier's armor. Theakisa, stop asking rude questions and fill this bath, Via Farelia said. Theos rolled her eyes and left to get water. Via Farelia sighed. Oh, I'm sorry about her. Lady Inha shook her head. It's fine, really. Vericica nodded. Via Farelia did not look convinced. Vericica looked up. What are you doing?
Well, you've been in the dungeon for, what, a week? Lady Inha said. Via Farelia nodded. At least. Yes, and you need a bath. Vericica blinked. With her here? Via Farelia shrugged. I've given my children baths, and we're all women here. Besides, you're in no state to do it yourself. Vericica's shoulders slumped, and she looked down, then shut her eyes.
Lady Inha tried to rub her arm to comfort her, but she gasped in pain. I'm sorry, Lady Inha said. Vericica's eyes opened, dull and glassy. She started mumbling to herself and shaking her head. Theos came back a couple minutes later and filled the tub. Thank you, Via Farelia said. Now go to your room and don't let no one in, especially not Moko or Keshokiso. Theos, for once, did not protest. She got her crocheting and went to her room. Via Farelia and Lady Inha washed the dirt, grime, and blood off of Vericica, careful to be gentle with her wounds. Her chest and back were mostly just bruised, but her arms and legs were covered in cuts, bruises, and marks left by ropes tied tightly and cruelly. Lady Inha and Via Farelia were both a little relieved that they did not have to deal with cleaning and untangling her hair, though this did not make what Ethicica had done to her right. Once she was clean, they dried her off and helped her put on her nightdress. Do you have any bandages? Lady Inha asked. Via Farelia frowned. Something like that. Ain't sure how well they'd work, but they're better than nothing. Lady Inha nodded. Thank you. The widow got her bandages, and they did what they could. Vericica's eyes cleared after a little, and she blinked. Lady Inha looked over. Are you feeling better? She frowned. A little. The world's making more sense. Though she could feel the fog at the edges of her mind, threatening to close in again. Her aunt smiled. I'm glad to have you back, Vericica. Vericica shook her head. No, you don't. She looked up, her eyes glistening with tears. Don't you get it? Behold, Vericica's dead. Gesha killed her. I'll never... She stopped, choking on her next words. I'll never be that girl again. She buried her face in her aunt's chest and cried. Feeling a little awkward, Via Farelia went to talk to Kesho and convinced him to let Vericica take his mother's bed, though she was assured that she would still sleep with him. When Vericica calmed, Lady Inha got her to bed and asked Via Farelia if they could have some food. The widow gave them some and left them alone. Vericica was not hungry, but she knew Lady Inha would worry more if she did not eat. Vericica shifted. What day is it? The second Wamnadi, Lady Inha said. Her eyes went wide. 11 days. How could it only be that long? Lady Inha sighed. Time seems to move slower in prison. Vericica nodded. It does, but somehow that also feels like too much time. She sighed. It's all just this blur, a haze of pain that somehow feels like an eternity in only seconds. Lady Inha put a hand on her shoulder. I'm sorry. Do you want to talk about what happened? Vericica frowned. I should. How'd you get captured? Kesha recognized me, Vericica said. She held up her left hand. And did all this. Why? Lady Inha's tone was even. What did she want to know? Vericica shook her head, putting her hand down. Nothing. She just wanted to have fun. Except for this. She held up her right hand and indicated her head. So why did that happen? Lady Inha fought to keep the anger out of her voice. Vericica shifted. She took my kerchief and pins when I was first captured. I found one and tried to escape, but she blinked, her eyes filling with tears. Lady Inha nodded. She broke your hand and cut off your hair. Vericica nodded. Lady Inha sighed and put a hand on her shoulder. I'm so sorry. Vericica said nothing for a little. Things Ethicica and Lord Gaguelosso had said to her running through her mind. So this is how the line ends, Ethicica had said once. A woman who's too good for anyone, and a niece who's too ugly for anyone. Vericica would have cried even if she had been thinking straight at the time. It is hard to believe this is the same girl. The Michka had chuckled. Oh, even a girl at all. That one had not made her cry, but it almost had. Vericica blinked away tears and looked up. I saw you bow to him. I didn't want you to, but you did. What did you do, Madhya? Lady Inha avoided her eyes. Well, he didn't exactly give you up for free. Vericica's eyes went wide. No. Lady Inha nodded. I did. Vericica tried to sit up, but cried in pain as she put weight on her hands, and so lay back down. No, you can't. And in blood. She looked up. Nadia, if you break that, you'll die. Her words were slurring a little. And what should I have done instead? Lady Inha's voice was more forceful now. You looked half dead, Vericica. I couldn't leave you there. And rescuing you was too dangerous. They would have killed you if we failed. She managed to keep her voice down so she did not disturb Villafarellia's family. Also, she continued, untying and unwrapping the bandage around her left hand, I may have sworn loyalty, but not in blood. The bandage appeared bloody, but there was no wound for it to have come from. Vericica blinked. But how? Cuts to the hand are surprisingly easy to fake. Just a little glamoury sleight of hand and fake blood. Then I just need to wear gloves until he's defeated, Lady Inha said. Vericica smiled and leaned back into her pillow, closing her eyes. Lady Inha thought she had gone to sleep when she spoke again. Gaga and Eligaria, how are they? Well, Gaga's children were born safely, Ivazebo and Lushum. We started calling them Iveloso and Lush. Eligaria and Dresho are getting married just after Dradirviesh, Lady Inha said. Vericica sighed. And then there's me. Got myself captured. Can barely walk or sit up. Can't even think straight. Lady Inha put a hand on her shoulder. Don't talk like that. You'll get better. The girl opened her eyes. I'm sorry, Nadia. I should have stayed home. It's all right, Lady Inha said. No changing it now. Vericica sighed and looked away. Her eyes started to drift shut, but then she shook her head and looked up. Nadia, she said. Lady Inha looked over at her. Yes, I remembered something. Her words were a little slurred. She looked away again, shifting. After I tried to escape, Kesha was trying to figure out what to do if I tried again. She said she might cut my hand off and thought it was funny because the Ethicica also lost a hand. Lady Inha frowned. The Jarissa lost a hand. Well, that isn't good, to say the least. Vericica looked up at her. Nadia, do you think he can win without a hand? From what I know, he's a good fighter and determined. She looked at her knees and her voice softened. I'm sure he'll figure out a way through this, Vericica. Don't worry about him. Vericica sighed. All right. She looked up again. I know some other things, too, like who stayed loyal. Lady Inha put a hand on her shoulder. You should rest, Vericica. Vericica shook her head. I'm fine. Won't take long. She told her some of the names. Lady Inha frowned. I've met Mircevilla. I thought she was a nice woman. Surprised she joined them, though I suppose she has a reputation and family to protect. Vericica nodded. Neslicier's grandson, Jarissa. He was captured. They had him chained by the throne, but I think they moved him to the dungeon. I see, said Lady Inha. She was sure that Princess Silenda would be interested in that news. Vericica's eyes were half closed, but she forced herself to stay awake to say that Zebocron had let her hands down and had been very angry about her hair. Or she assumed that was what he was angry about. At that point, her voice was slurring, and Lady Inha threatened to leave if she did not go to sleep. Once Vericica was asleep, Lady Inha and Villafarellia washed her clothes, and the former washed her hand, then went to bed as well. Lady Inha and Vericica left early the next morning. When Lady Inha and Vericica reached Old Sillery, the latter's condition had, at best, marginally improved, and, at worst, outright deteriorated. She fell back into delirium after they left Villafarellia's house, and never regained the clarity she had after her bath. They finally returned on the third agradi, just after sundown. The Princess Silenda met them outside Lady Inha's house. Oh, good, you're back, she said. How's Vericica? Not well, said Lady Inha. I have to take her to the doctor. Can you put all this away and clean it up? Princess Silenda nodded. Of course. Lady Inha got off her horse and carried Vericica to the doctor, while Princess Silenda put everything back and started washing the blankets. Though it was a little late, the doctor agreed to help Vericica since she was so badly hurt. He sighed. My goodness, what did they do to her? He looked up. Have you done anything for her? He asked. Lady Inha nodded. I gave her a bath and tried to bandage her wounds. Did whoever did this to her? Yes, Vericica murmured. Jarissa of Garendo, who was calling herself Ethicica and working with the Jarissa King, Lady Inha said. The doctor frowned. The one who crashed that wedding with pears? She nodded. And no, she didn't do anything to help her. Well, I want her in looser clothes, and she should avoid walking, especially barefoot, and using her hands. I'd say that ideally she should be in socks, the doctor said. Shoes, if you have to. What about her hand? Lady Inha asked. It'll heal, but not well, said the doctor. You did straighten it pretty well, though. It would have helped if she'd stopped trying to take it off, Lady Inha said. Vericica looked up. Her gaze was glassy, but apologetic. Yes, well, the only way to fix that would be to break and set everything again. Vericica shut her eyes and shook her head. Which she clearly doesn't want, and anyway, with how many fractures there are, it would be hard to do. It'd probably just make it worse. He frowned at her hand. I'm more worried about this cut. It's pretty deep, and it'll be hard to treat with everything broken. I should be able to, but it'll be hard. I'll try to find time to see her every day. Lady Inha nodded. Should I bring her here? Usually I'd say yes, but I don't want her walking, he said. Should I leave her here? He shook his head. With what she's been through, the best thing for her is to be at home. She nodded. All right. He treated Vericica's wounds and set the bones in her hand, then sent them home. Vericica's eyes cleared a little when they entered, and she looked up. We're home, she murmured. Lady Inha nodded. Yes, we are. Now let's get you to bed. Vericica leaned against her. Lady Inha took her to her room and helped her out of her dress and extra skirts so she could sleep in her shift. Vericica practically collapsed into bed and fell asleep almost immediately. Lady Inha got her under the covers and left to find her goddaughter. Princess Silenda was washing the blankets. Lady Inha sat beside her. She's asleep. Princess Silenda sighed and sat back. That poor girl, she said in her normal voice. Lady Inha could afford to do her laundry inside, and adhered to the Riskin principle that if she was supposed to rule the Soledo, she should also do her own laundry. So there was no one else around. Princess Silenda looked up. I know she was captured. What happened to her? Do you know Ethicica? Lady Inha asked. She nodded. Unfortunately. Did she hurt her? That's what Vericica told me, Lady Inha said. Admittedly, she's not the most reliable source, but her head was clearer at that time. Well, I suppose that makes sense, Princess Silenda said. She fiddled with her hair. Who else would do that to a girl? Lady Inha looked at her. Whoever took Kara's hairpins. Princess Silenda blushed. Lady Inha sighed. I'm sorry. She shook her head. No, we should not have done that. She looked up. I heard that the woken was quite angry. Lady Inha raised an eyebrow. Via qui savoy. I'm not surprised he'd get angry about a woman being disrespected like that. I'm just surprised he would get angry about a Soledo. Perhaps he is different from his father, Princess Silenda said. Lady Inha nodded. Certainly. If he also got into a similar situation to the one he was in recently back during the business at Ethicica, and he helped him then. I suppose this time he felt that Fieso's imprisonment was justified. There was an edge to her voice at the last part. Princess Silenda looked down, pausing in her work. Lady Inha looked over at her. Do you think we should have done more to help them? The girl looked up. Well, I should have. Kara was a spy, but Fieso was an innocent man. And then there was Linsco and Ethicica too. They are my friends, and I did nothing to help them. Lady Inha inclined her head. Yes, but I understand why you didn't. Because I'm too weak to go against my parents' wills. said Princess Silenda. She resumed her work. Lady Inha raised an eyebrow. Gaga said you were either captured or unconscious for most of the time before Linsco and Ethicica were released. As for Gaga and Fiesel, I heard that you were advocating for their release. I suppose, she said, Vericica did as well. She smiled. Did you hear how they stopped sleeping in the same room after what happened to Fiesel? Lady Inha nodded, smiling as well. I did. I am a little confused, though. If he was angry with her, why did he leave rather than making her leave? Princess Silenda laughed. Force his wife, the queen, from her room. We are talking about the same man, right? King Ridero was the type of man who never made any aggressive action towards a woman, especially not his family, and especially not his wife or daughter, unless she was actively attacking him. After the scandal with Duke Garendo, he had threatened to kill the Duke for what he had done to his servants. It took a great effort by the three Silenda to talk him out of it, and he still went to Lady Inha and offered her a large sum of money to assassinate him, which she was certainly tempted to accept, both for the money and for what he had done to her spies and his servants. Lady Inha inclined her head. Good point. It always seemed so strange to me how a man who runs the military and regularly led his armies into battle would also open the door for an escaping criminal if she were a woman, and is too courteous to exile his wife from their room. As I have said before, Princess Silenda said, smiling fondly and a little sadly. Chivalry personified. I suppose so. Lady Inha paused, considering. Vericica says your berated friend Alonso was captured. She gasped. Oh, dear, is he all right? She glanced at the door. I don't know, said Lady Inha. The Jarissa King said he's annoyed with Kesha. That's Ethicica. She blinked. Ethira is not her real name? It is Caresha? Lady Inha smiled a little. I would have thought you'd guess that first one. It's just an adjective. Princess Silenda inclined her head. Yes, but she does work with a man named an augmentative of an infantile onomatopoeia, the descendant of someone named the root of that. I suppose so, said Lady Inha. Anyway, he said he's annoyed with her for torturing the prisoners and apologized for what she did to Vericica, but he didn't seem to do anything to stop it. Her tone became bitter with that last statement. So I do not know how he's doing. She sighed. Goodness. I hope he is all right. As do I. Lady Inha paused again, then told her that Linsco had lost his hand. Princess Silenda gasped. His right or his left? I do not know, but I'd guess the left. It's easier to cut off your opponent's sword hand when you're fighting, not to mention more practical, Lady Inha said. Princess Silenda fidgeted. Oh, dear. I suppose it is a good thing he chose St. Elminio as his patron, then. I suppose so. She looked at the girl, and her voice softened. He's a strong boy, Silenda. He'll make it through this, I'm sure of it. Princess Silenda sighed. I hope you're all right. Lady Inha nodded, then frowned, looking at their work. I can finish this. Can you go watch over Vericica? She looked up. Of course. Is it safe to tell her who I am? It is, Lady Inha said. Princess Silenda nodded. All right. She stood and went upstairs to sit at Vericica's bedside. When Vericica woke, she was knitting. Princess Silenda smiled. Good afternoon, Vericica. Luchance, you're Madika's ward, she said in her fake accent. Sorry, I've any crying, but it's a bit strange. Most people around here call me by my real name. Vericica blinked slowly. What? People call me Songe. Vericica blinked. Sounds like... Princess Silenda sighed. Yes, I know, it sounds like the S word. I'm starting to wonder if that's what they were saying and I just misheard. She actually said the name of the letter rather than just the sound it made. She paused, then said in her normal voice, although that is not entirely true. Vericica looked up. Who? She hesitated, then told her. I am Princess Silenda. Vericica blinked, then relaxed, smiling. "Princess, you're safe." Her words were slurred. The next day, a letter arrived for Lady Inha. She read it, then gave it back to an incredibly nervous messenger, who fully expected that the only part of him that was going to leave Old Sillery was his head. Her face was impassive. "Tell him I will be there," Lady Inha said. The messenger managed to nod. Once the shock of his head still being attached to his shoulders wore off, he left. Lady Inha went inside and sat with her goddaughter. Princess Silenda was watching over Vericica, who was asleep. She looked up at her godmother's entrance. "Good morning," she said in her fake accent. "Good morning. We are alone," Lady Inha said. Princess Silenda nodded to the letter. "What does that say?" Lady Inha frowned. "Nothing good. Your parents have arrived in Chivalrous." Princess Silenda gasped. "Does that mean—" Lady Inha nodded. "They will be executed on Farulagi." "And Gaguelosso?" She was fighting to keep her voice steady. "Is he—" "By some miracle, safe, to my knowledge," said Lady Inha. "Well, at least we have that," Princess Silenda said. Then she started crying, burying her face in her chest. Prince Gato had a different reaction. He almost went off to Casedo to assassinate Garendo. The person protecting him threatened to throw him in her dungeon if he tried, a threat she used often and had made good on more than once. She agreed to let him go to the execution in disguise with someone else, but if she heard he had tried something stupid, then she would throw him in her dungeon. Lady Inha looked at Princess Silenda when she calmed. "I am supposed to be there. Do you know what that means?" Princess Silenda shook her head. "What?" "I need you to help run things here and look after Vericica. You can cry as much as you want when I get back, but until then I need you to stay together. Can you do that for me?" Lady Inha said. Princess Silenda nodded. "Yes, I think I can." "Good. Then I must leave. I will tell everyone to come to you if they need something." Princess Silenda nodded. "All right." Lady Inha stood, then after thinking for a second, gave the girl a hug. "I am sorry, Mia Sija." Princess Silenda tried to smile. "I will get through this." Lady Inha left. Vericica woke a little later. "Where's Madja?" Princess Silenda sighed. "My parents. They will be killed soon." Vericica's eyes went wide. Then her face hardened. "I'm going to kill him." She staggered out of bed, grimacing as she put weight on her feet. She frowned. "Where are my knives?" Spots flooded her vision, and she shook her head to clear it. Princess Silenda stood and shook her head, eyes wide. She took Vericica's shoulders, both trying to hold her back and hold her up. This was made difficult by the fact that Vericica was about a foot taller than her. "You cannot!" she sighed. "I want to as well, but I have not the resources, and you can barely stand. How do you expect to even make it to Sonera?" Vericica sighed, her eyes clouding a little. "I can't." Princess Silenda nodded. "The best thing you can do right now is try to get better." Vericica relaxed, letting the younger girl put her back in bed. She sighed. "I didn't agree with them, but don't want them to die," she murmured. Princess Silenda blinked, holding back tears. "Neither do I." Vericica said nothing for a little while. Princess Silenda thought she had fallen back into the fog, but then she spoke. "I won't let them hurt you." Princess Silenda doubted she could, but smiled. "Thank you." Later that day, a boy named Agri, who everyone, except Princess Silenda, knew loved Vericica, came to the door with a pot of soup. He said he wanted to give it to Vericica and asked if he could see her. Princess Silenda said she was sleeping, but she would ask once the girl woke up. Vericica said she did not want to see anyone, but did accept the soup and told her to thank him and tell him she liked it. They had always been close, though whether Vericica loved him in the way he loved her, she did not know. But she did not want him to see her in her state. On the morning of the 3rd Faluladi of Duomi, Queen Silenda the 14th and King Ridero the 2nd were led to their deaths. They had been cleaned and dressed in fine clothes, or as fine as they wore. The queen was wearing an orange dress trimmed in silver. Her skirt was long and full, though her bodice and sleeves were fitted to her form. The king was dressed in the gray of the house he had been born to, his clothes simple compared to his wife's. He held his wife's hand, both of them holding on tightly. Garendo stood taller even than the king. He wore dark red and black, a sword sheathed at his hip. There was no triumph in his face, rather it was solemn, and his amber eyes were serious. "Queen Silenda, King Ridero," he said, "I wish I did not have to kill you. My parents were taken from me when I was young, and I would hate to do the same to your children. So I will offer you a chance for mercy. Accept me as your king. Swear loyalty to me and bow before me, and I will let you live. Do this, and your children will not be orphaned." Queen Silenda's voice rang out clearly. "I am the rightful queen of Quinia Resticale. That is simply the truth, no matter how much you would like it to be different." Her grip on King Ridero's hand tightened. Vericica was the singular vocative of Vericico. Garendo sighed. "King Ridero, my wife and I may have had our disagreements, but I will not betray her, especially not to you," King Ridero said. "I wish you hadn't said that," Garendo said, "for my throne cannot be stable if you live and refuse to accept my rule." "Then perhaps you should not have taken what was not yours. Now, during my grandfather's reign, and during the reign of King Lucian IV," Queen Silenda said. A shadow passed over Garendo's face at the mention of King Lucian. "It might not have been mine, but it should not have been theirs or yours either. When the monarch fails, it is the duty of the people to stand up to him or her," he said. "Perhaps, but there are many ways to do that which do not involve murder," Queen Silenda said. Garendo sighed. "I am sorry about this, Queen Silenda. Sorry for you and for your children." And with that, he drew his sword and put it through her chest. She gasped, her eyes going wide. Garendo pulled his sword back, and she collapsed, King Ridero catching her and sitting, holding her in his lap. Her blood spread across his hands and clothes. History would not remember her very kindly. She would become known as Queen Silenda the Blind, because of how she had focused on the war with the Soledo rather than the Rossene taking over her country. However, there was not much rejoicing at her death, not even among the Soledo rebels. Lady Inha's expression was almost sorrowful. Garendo's eyes held regret and old pain. One boy lunged forward, but was held back by his companions. He pulled his hat and hood down and stared at his boots, furious tears beginning to fall from his eyes. He wanted to scream. He wanted to fight. He wanted to do anything but what he was doing then, standing there, crying and doing nothing to help. Linsco was watching, though he had not entirely convinced himself that this was real, rather than some fever dream or a trick his mind was playing. The sunlight hurt his eyes after weeks of the dungeon's gloom. Maybe this was how his mind made sense of the bright lights and colors. "Allow me this," King Ridero said, looking at his wife but speaking to Garendo. "Let me hold her until she dies. Give me a moment to mourn, and then allow me to fight, to die as a warrior." He did not harbor any delusions of winning. Not after about 2 weeks without a decent meal, or with his wife's death so fresh in his mind. Garendo nodded. "Of course." King Ridero did not lift his gaze from her face until her chest stilled, and her hand slid from his, and her gaze no longer held his. He stared down at her body for a moment, then held her close, closed his eyes, and wept. Garendo watched this. His face betrayed nothing, but jealousy sparked within him. Jealousy of their closeness, when everyone he had loved had been dead for centuries, and of how openly King Ridero cried, how he could plainly show his grief, not burying it deep inside himself, crying where other people could see him. It had been so long since he had felt companionship, and he had felt so little throughout his life, since anyone had shown him affection, and he had never known the love King Ridero and Queen Silenda shared. He had hardly even seen it. Regret flooded over him. He wished he could go back, not just a few minutes, or a few days, or even a few weeks or months. He wished he had never done any of this. He wished he had stayed the king of the Jarisse, and not become the Jarissa King. But he could not go back, and he certainly could not turn around right that minute. He had done all this for a reason, and the reasons for the pain he felt watching King Ridero mourn were the same reasons he had done what he had done. Finally, King Ridero put his wife's body down and stood. Garendo nodded to one of his guards, and she gave the king her sword. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough with grief. He took hold of the braid at the left side of his face, held it out, then put his sword against it, at the same height as his ears. He sliced off half the braid, secured it, and set the hair he had cut off on the queen's body. "I am sorry," Garendo said. "Save it for your confessor," King Ridero said. He lunged at the other man, and they fought. Though he fought well, he could hardly focus on something other than his wife and children. All he could think of was how much he already missed Queen Silenda, and how worried he was for the prince and princess, especially the former. Finally, Garendo had his sword pointed at the king's chest. "I will give you one more chance," he said. "Accept me as your king, and your children will not be orphaned." "The only king I accept is the one I am about to meet," King Ridero said. Garendo sighed. He killed King Ridero in the same way he had killed his wife. With the last of his strength, King Ridero dragged himself to his wife's body and died at her side. Garendo watched, his eyes solemn and his eyes regretful. That night, when Garendo went to his room, he shut the door and leaned against it. He closed his eyes, but when he felt tears fall from them, they flew open again, and he jumped, his breathing fast and panicked. He forced himself to slow down, to breathe slowly and deeply, to remember where he was. Lady Inha returned late afternoon on Hiladi. Vericica was sleeping. Princess Silenda tried to smile. "Good afternoon," she said in her fake accent. The fact Lady Inha had returned meant her parents were dead. Lady Inha sat next to her. "We're alone." Princess Silenda sighed. "Are they really?" Lady Inha nodded. "Queen Silenda and King Ridero fell by the Jarissa King's sword on Fraluladi morning." There was a second where nothing happened. Then the girl started crying. Again Lady Inha held her. Vericica woke and seemed to understand what had happened. "The queen is dead," she said. Lady Inha nodded, and Vericica's gaze drifted to the other girl. "Long live the queen,"